sponsored by Squarespace. The affluent Zhu family was worried, for their daughter Zhu Yingtai had fallen ill. When every doctor failed, her father, in desperation, turned to a passing fortune teller for advice. "I heard your daughter longs to attend school," the fortune teller said. "A sickness of the heart requires a remedy of the mind, so why not let her?" The father sighed. He knew Yingtai's wish well, but in ancient China, schools were reserved for boys. "But what if she disguised herself?" the fortune teller suggests. Then, with a knowing smile, he removed his own disguise. To the father's astonishment, the fortune teller was Yingtai all along. With her parents reluctantly persuaded, Yingtai left for the Confucius Academy to live the life she longed for. On the journey, she met a fellow student, Liang Shanbo, and they became instant friends. For 3 years, they shared the same dormitory and studied side by side. Day after day, their bond deepened until the two became inseparable. When Yingtai was called home, Shanbo escorted her for 18 miles. "Look at those mandarin ducks," Yingtai said. "They come in pairs, just like us." "Oh, silly Yingtai," Shanbo laughed. "How can two men be a pair?" It's a tale as old as time. A girl drops a hint and the boy just doesn't get it. The nights at the academy felt empty without Yingtai. One evening, as Shanbo sat, lost in memory, the teacher's wife visited him with the truth. All this time, Yingtai had been a woman. The truth fell upon him all at once. "The birds come in pairs," he cried. Overjoyed, Shanbo hurried to her home to propose. But he was too late, for when Shanbo arrived, Yingtai had already been promised to another man. No matter how she pleaded, her father would not relent. Reunion turned to farewell. Shanbo returned home and soon passed away from a broken heart. On her wedding day, Yingtai was carried towards her new life. The sky hung heavy, holding back its rain as a storm gathered on the horizon. When the procession passed Shanbo's grave, Yingtai broke free and ran to it. In her sorrow, she pleaded to the heavens, "If we cannot live together, let us die together." A sudden storm surged forth as lightning split Shanbo's grave open. Without hesitation, Yingtai leapt inside. From the grave rose 2 butterflies. They ascended into the sky as a pair, at last free to live the life they longed for. That was the tale of the Butterfly Lovers, one of China's most beloved folk tales. In this new series, I'd like to introduce many such legends, examine how the film adaptations evolved over time, and see how each retelling reflects the era that shaped it. From the haunting romance between the living and the dead, to a gruesome tale of monsters in human skin, there is much I'd love to share with you. So, make yourself comfortable and let me tell you a story. This is the Butterfly Lovers. Our first film today is The Love Eternal, a 1963 Shaw Brothers classic we featured before, notably for its cross-gender casting. This adaptation is quite faithful to the Shaoxing opera version, perhaps the story's most popular form. From Yingtai feigning illness to the 18 miles farewell by the ducks, it follows the opera beat for beat. Like many adaptations of its time, it skips most of the school life. I guess people back then also thought school was boring. What kind of nerd would fight their parents to go to school anyway? Against this faithful backdrop, the few changes made stand out a lot. For example, the opening scene sees Ying-tai disguised as a doctor instead of a fortune teller. It makes Ying-tai more scholarly and thus more suitable for school.
哦，得的是这种怪物。
I swear that's the official English subtitle. Another notable addition happens in class, when the teacher quotes Confucius. Women and the mean are hard to keep. They are insolent and ungrateful. This prompts Ying-tai to fact-check Confucius, listing Chinese heroines across history. It's a sharp character moment that highlights her headstrong nature, which elevates the theme of the story. Ying-tai's questioning of Confucian teaching foreshadows her later protest against her arranged marriage. It makes it clear that she's not fighting her father, but the entire patriarchal system. For its time, changes like that were a bold statement. The 1950s and 60s marked rapid industrialization in Hong Kong and Taiwan. Women entered the workforce in large numbers, and with financial freedom came demand for autonomy. Hong Kong even coined the term factory girls. Movies were made about them, songs were sung to praise them. It was a big social change. And so, production company Shaw Brothers entered a feminist cycle, producing movies that reflect this cultural shift. Empress Wu, for example, depicts Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor, as a woman with a seething hatred towards sexist men. The climax has her purging all male political rivals. If only they were executed with giant robots. Many female-led films of the era carried similar themes of empowerment. Naturally, when adapting The Butterfly Lovers, filmmakers wove in their own feminist commentary. With that context, we can now reassess the film's cross-gender casting. By 1963, there had already been multiple adaptations of the legend, and Shanbo was predominantly played by women. It's a long-standing tradition in opera and cinema. But this film pushes further, as within the all-male Confucian Academy, Shanbo is far from the only man played by a woman. There's no explanation for why other classmates are played by women. If women can play Shanbo, why not every other man? This brings us to the scene when Ying-tai first meets Shanbo. Here, she invents a sister who prefers ink over rouge, books over jewelry, but whose orthodox father keeps her confined to the boudoir. In venting her grievances, Ying-tai introduces the film's feminist lens, reframing the love story around women's autonomy. If men can decide where to study, who to love, and how to live, why can't women do the same? If you like to fact-check Confucius, the best way to put him on full blast is with a website from Squarespace. Accessible worldwide on nearly any device, with no account requirements and no barrier, a website lets you critique outdated philosophy in a fully customizable format. Start from scratch for maximum personality, or use a template for efficiency. No one stands between you and your valid criticism. Squarespace automatically optimizes your site for mobile and provides built-in analytics, so you can track how far your philosophical rebellion travels. I know what you're thinking. Yang, that's so petty. Why diss an old man from 2000 years ago? But you know who else was petty? Wu Zetian, and she became an emperor. That's why you should start your free trial at squarespace.com/accentcinema right now. Use the code accentcinema for 10% off your first purchase. Don't let bygones be bygones. Speak your mind and spread your word. Visit squarespace.com/accentcinema and start your website today. Next is today's feature presentation, The Lovers, released in 1994. Directed by Hong Kong math genius Tsui Hak, this adaptation takes only the broad outline and reinvents nearly everything else. There's no fortune teller disguise, Yingtai doesn't meet Shanbo until school, and worst of all, there are no Mandarin ducks. And yet, despite all these changes, the film is widely regarded as a modern classic. Why is that? Let's start at the beginning. Unlike the headstrong Yingtai of the past, this Yingtai has no grand ambition. It's her mother who sends her to school. By 1994, compulsory education was standard. Going to school was no longer a rebellious act. Instead, this Yingtai is terrible at studying. It's a familiar 90s archetype, like Stephen Chow from Fight Back to School, like Nobita from Doraemon. As you may have noticed, these characters are usually male. Having an idiot female lead, it's a role reversal. In contrast, Shanbo, played by popular 90s idol Nikki Wu, is reimagined as a dreamy himbo. This flawless cinnamon roll is exactly how the innocent Yingtai sees him. The film aligns us with Yingtai's perspective, which is a subtle but crucial change. The most significant change, however, is the extended school life, something previous adaptations glossed over. A large chunk of the runtime unfolds inside the academy. We watch them study together, argue over best space, and even help each other cheat in exams. We see them slowly fall in love, and the romance unfolds long before Shanbo knew Yingtai was a woman. One thing to remember is that the 90s were really gay. With Top Gun and Point Break setting the tone, and Farewell My Concubine bringing gay rights into the public discourse, Hong Kong was on the verge of a queer revolution. So it's no surprise that Shanbo has a gay classmate, who, surprisingly for the era, was not a walking gay joke. You see, this classmate has a crush on Shanbo, but Shanbo does not reciprocate. In fact, he reacts with visible discomfort. This adds a layer to Shanbo's character arc. After spending so much time together and literally sleeping on the same no-homo bed, Yingtai and Shanbo cannot help but feel something. So, Yingtai repeatedly tells herself not to fall in love, and Shanbo hilariously tells himself not to turn gay. That's right, Shanbo is in gay panic. The next day, distracted by each other in class, the two are punished by the teacher.
我担心我对你好，就像你对你表妹那样，那我岂不是很虚？
Later, a jealous prank from the gay classmate causes Shanbo to break his instrument, an offense that carries harsh punishment. Without hesitation, Yingtai swaps instruments with him and takes the blame. She stands outside in punishment until nightfall. That evening, when thinking about Yingtai, Shanbo plays a song to keep her company. From dusk till night, he pours out his heart. When he finishes,
发自心肝脾肺肾，我明白了。
suddenly, gay or not, it no longer matters. With these changes, The Lovers feels much more like a full-bodied romance. Appropriately, in this version of the 18 Miles Farewell, they confess.
你是不是觉得刚才抱着的是个男孩子？
我早知道我抱着的不是个男孩子。
Having seen their love grow and blossom, the subsequent heartbreak feels much more intense. The rest of the film unfolds as expected, but everything is dialed to 11. Yingtai is promised to another and locked away until her wedding. Shanbo dies from his heartbreak, leaving behind an empty letter signed in blood. On her wedding day, Yingtai escapes the procession. At Shanbo's grave beside his name, she wrote her name with her own blood. The grave opens and she leaps in. While tackling the same topic of patriarchy, the previous version argues with logic, and this version appeals to your emotions. This Yingtai isn't a superwoman who dares to question tradition. She's ordinary and unambitious. And still, she deserves to choose her own life. You shouldn't have to debate your right to exist. That's why the film is told from her perspective. We feel every joy and heartbreak, which is why the ending resonates strongly. When the butterflies rise, they are not just paired, but they are also free. Around the 2000s, there was this weird trend of trying to turn Ma Wencai into a major antagonist. If you're wondering who in the ass is Ma Wencai, well, he's the man Yingtai is promised to. I never brought him up because he never appeared in either movie. That is how unimportant he is. By making him the villain, these adaptations utterly miss the point. And that's the last part we should talk about. What is the point of the story? The earliest surviving reference to the butterfly lovers dates to the late Tang Dynasty, some 1100 years ago. And in the 1,000 years since, the story remained remarkably unchanged. Yingtai went to school as a boy, fell in love with her classmate Shanbo. She was promised to someone else, and Shanbo died of a heartbreak soon after. Yingtai visited Shanbo's grave on her wedding day. The grave opened and she leapt in. In every version, she's a victim of an arranged marriage. The enduring nature of this story reveals how deeply it resonated throughout Chinese history. Though arranged marriage was the norm, the tale suggests there were always those who resisted it. That is why the argument that people in the past had different morals never rang true to me. The slaves knew slavery was wrong. The colonized knew colonialism was wrong. And Chinese women 1,000 years ago knew the shackles they wore were unjust. Fundamentally, The Butterfly Lovers is a tragedy that protests the oppression of women. Every retelling becomes a renewal protest against a problem that persisted for a millennium. Arranged marriage may be less common today, but social expectations continue to dictate how women live and die. This is why I share this story with you. There is much to be done until the butterflies are set free.